As ever, I am joined by the delightful Anne Law Jackson. Hello, Anne.
Hello, good morning, afternoon, evening.
Yes, I say this a lot now. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good night, whatever time it is, because, we're going out around the world, so who knows?
I know. I know, it's a lovely thing to be able to say and think, actually, wherever you are, hello.
Yes, exactly. Right, I'm going to jump straight to this because I thought real life examples are good and they're gritty. So last week, I was supposed to have had a 2-day trip, about 1,000 miles. I was going to go to Oldham, to the east of Manchester, into Manchester, drive down to Exeter, the south of the country. I was going to drive it to Swindon, see a bunch of people. That was my plan. So I thought, what would Anne Law Jackson do? So I tried to plan myself brakes and have enough fluids. I had stops built in there, so it was all fine. Anyway, the car broke down, and this is what I really wanted to talk to you about. The car broke down in a live lane of a motorway. So we're driving along 4 lanes wide because there's roadworks. And my car decides, when we've all come to a stop because there's a bit of congestion, we all stop, and my engine says, no, thank you, I'll have a little break now, which wasn't ideal. So I then ring the police saying, I'm stranded on a live motorway. Everyone is now dashing past me because nobody wants to, slow down. How do we best process sensory crises, shall we say? I've done so much to try and make it a good trip, but you cannot plan for a crisis because it's out of your control by the very nature of it. So how do we best try to deal with it going wrong? Because for me, my sensory experience of that one was panic, tears, shaking, trying to get off the motorway when there's bollards everywhere, there's no way off. I eventually get the car going, 300 yards later, pull into a works area through some cones. How do we, and there's an example for you, deal with a crisis which is outside of our control? How do we best process that the best? How do we kind of, deal with that?
Goodness, first off, I have to say, praise God, you are still alive. Goodness me.
Amen.
What an experience. That is horrifying. Utterly. Crisis, as you say. Crisis, things you cannot prepare for, and things that will keep coming back in memory as you go, as we go further, as you relive and think, what else could I have done, and all the rest of it. So leaving all of the cognitive stuff aside and all of the mental mayhem that causes, it's okay. Preparing for crises. Let's think. We know what happens physiologically to the body when crises happen. So we have a physiological. When we know that a crisis is going to stimulate our sympathetic nervous system, which means that we are going to start. The heart is going to start racing. Our breath is going to get more shallow. There may be need of toileting, we're going to get more flushed. It just everything becomes on alert, where we then become so much more sensitive to sensory issues because everything is put on alert and everything is heightened because of that fight, fright, flight experience. And we just have to think, we just have to act, we have to protect ourselves in that situation. So before any crisis, it's that sensory bag that we kind of take around with us. And it's just, it's almost if you had something written down, because there are often times when our brains just aren't thinking. And it's just, if we could think enough, I've got something in my bag, I've got something that kind of tells me, okay, breathe deeply. It is like, if you just have to sit there in order to enable you to think, the first thing would be just sit and breathe, count in for 5 and blow out for 5. Just to try and calm the mind, to try and calm the body, to get oxygen in when it's just being just literally just shattered by everything that's going on. Sensory health-wise, it would be just activating muscles, movement, squeezing, thinking, praying, down on the knees, just squeezing the muscles and relaxing, just all over the body to try and get some form of regulation, self-regulation into the system. But often we just have to act on impulse, especially when there's a threat of danger. I think first and foremost, it's, get yourself out of danger, which is exactly what you were doing. And then it would be the recovery. So once you would be back in that lane, then it would be the recovery of breathe, squeeze, relax, breathe some more, wind down, get fresh air, wind down the windows, or just do whatever you need to. If you need to spin around, if you need to tip your head upside down and then fling it back up again, it's whatever, if you need that vestibular sense of whatever your system needs, I would always go to the body and think, how can I just bring my body back down to some form of regulation? Some people would just run on the spot for a couple of minutes and get the stress out, as it were. It just fires those proprioceptors to bring the neurochemicals back into a state of relaxation quicker than it might ordinarily do. But yeah, your sympathetic nervous system is just on fire in those situations, and we just try with sensory principles to bring it back down as quickly as possible. But that's a real assault on the body. It's tough.
Yeah, of course you're limited because you're basically on the side of the motorway. I was the other side of some concrete barriers, which helped because then I started to relax again, thinking, well, now I'm about as safe as I'm going to be. I was actually parked behind a toilet block for the work people, so I'm thinking, this is about as safe as it gets. They're not going to put a toilet block in a dangerous location. The other side of concrete barriers on a slip road off the motorway. So already I'm kind of processing and thinking, well, okay, now I'm in a less dangerous situation. I was shaking, I was crying. That then calms down, and because I'm stuck behind the steering wheel of a car, unable to do anything that might have helped, like go for a little walk and kind of clear my head, I'm just stuck in a car. So I did put the radio on. And to be honest, Pure 24/7 radio got me through because I heard friendly voices. This isn't, a shameless plug. It was really nice to hear somebody who I respect and like. It was actually Stephen D on the Late Lunch, and to hear his voice doing what he normally does, I sort of tuned into, okay, this is what normally happens at this point in the show, and this is what happens. And actually, that was all I could really do. And I focused into that quite hard. I was very busy because I was trying to get the recovery sorted and all of that. But it's hard, isn't it? Because the thing is about crisis, you can't plan for the crisis. But like you say, there are things we can do, and we try and minimize. So I tried to minimize the journey, but that's one of those that there's no way I could have prepared for that.
Yeah. And that's where, especially with those who are aware that they have sensory processing issues, for you, that was a crisis that was just completely out of the ordinary. But for my people, as it were, we know that those situations where there could be a meltdown do happen. So that's where we have that degree of preparation where we don't know when it's going to happen, but we know it is going to happen. So that's where it's like, so at least right, let's go to the bag. Let's go and find my 5 things, my 5 go-to. Sometimes people might have just a little hand like stuck, just as an example, you could have a little hand stuck on your windscreen if you're in a dodgy car or you're not quite sure what it's like. And it says, right, okay, first one, breathe. Second one, squeeze and relax. Third one, lie down. Fourth one, if I can get out of the car and just run on the spot, let me do that. Fifth one, I might just need to turn my head upside down. Or I put the radio on. Whatever your 5 things are, I would recommend anybody get your 5 things, get your hand, so that even if you don't have a hand anywhere else, you can look at your hand and think, what is it I'm supposed to do again? When your brain is just not processing terribly well and the connections aren't terribly happening, you can look at your hand and think, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, breathe. Right, first one. And just to get a sense of, right, okay, what's next? What's next? What do I need to do? And that's lovely. That familiar voice, the auditory system there was really powerful. I'm glad your radio was still working, because sometimes if the battery goes, then you've lost everything, haven't you? You've lost all connection. Things that are familiar, really nice. And having things in the boot of the car. If you've got children that you're taking away, make sure you've got the cuddly toy or the little blanket, or those things are really, really important to help with the regulation, the tactile experiences. We've got one of the boys in one of the schools that I work in. She's Afro-Caribbean, and the mum, and they have various hair pieces, like wigs, and so it for her little boy. So I said, well, we have a real problem with him coming into school and being in school, but that's where the parents want him to be. So it's like, is there a transition object that he can take in And we now have one of her hair pieces because it smells like mum, it feels like mum, it is mum when she has it on, and that's what he carried into school, and he goes around with it, and it's kind of strange to see, but it's also beautiful to see because he's much happier, and you just think happy children. That's what we want. So.
I love that with the idea of the hairpiece. Just here, it's going to smell something of his mum. It's going to feel like something he associates. It's all those things together, isn't it? It's lovely. I did do the breathing thing. Mostly, I was trying to get breathing back because I was definitely in a panic. I had been crying, and I wasn't hyperventilating because I was too busy. To be honest, I couldn't panic too much because I knew I needed to get done something to get off the motorway.
Right.
So, but I definitely stopped, and I was very conscious of my breathing. I don't think I thought, what would Dan do here? It was more, I think this is actually quite good. So I actually did do some breathing just to try and calm down. I knew my heart was racing. I knew everything was alert. Adrenaline would have been going something chronic. And breathing was something I did do for a little while, just because, one, I had no choice when I stopped, when I finally got off the motorway. And two, this is feeling a bit better. Let's do a bit more. So I didn't do lots because I needed to get on the phone to other things. But the breathing. How does the breathing? What is? You talk about regulation, but what's going on to help us to calm down?
Yeah. I'm trying to think of how to explain what happens and how oxygen does that. And I'm struggling, to be honest. It is the sense of we have to breathe in and then hold and then out. There is something in those processes that's going to be one I'll come back to actually see if I can actually go on a deeper level. We just know that it works so powerfully, and it's one of the best tools that we have. Breathing in, holding, breathe in for 5, hold for 5, breathe out for 5. Somehow that arrests the flow, the fight. It stops it somehow, and I don't quite understand how it does it, but we just know that it does beautifully and powerfully. That's all I can say really to that one.
Okay, and then let's move along a bit more to some more sensory stuff. So I get the car working. I'm told to go home. Don't deviate, just drive yourself home, which is fine. Okay, the car's working. It just has this random fault. Right, okay. But what I found was every time I came to, we call it smart motorways in the UK. So you have 4 lanes of motorway, and they've got rid of the hard shoulder, which was basically an emergency area. When you break down, you pull into the hard shoulder. They've got rid of so many of these now to make it a smart motorway that every time I came to one of those, and I'm thinking, I've got nowhere to go if I break down. I can't pull to the side because it's now a live lane. They say that they're monitored, but somebody still has to see it, press a button. The X on the motorway has to come in so people get out of the lane. So it's still going to be a process. So what I found myself doing was having to force myself mentally to stay calm every time I hit either a bit of roadworks and there were bollards at the sides, or cones, which is what I'd seen when I broke down, or smart motorway, which I think is the stupidest idea in the world. When I got to those stretches, I really had to concentrate on staying calm. So I'm trying to think about what I did, but I would move across to lane 1, so nearest to the edge, hoping that perhaps there's a bit of a grass verge I can pull onto. So that's what I did for the best part of many, many hours of driving. And so at this point, I'm trying to manage my own stress of what happened, memory, and try and keep my calm breathing so I can focus on driving the car, which I'm guessing that in itself, perhaps slightly extreme, but actually that's what happens when someone's in a crisis with sensory, because how do you manage stuff? Because you know that's going to be that's a red flag, and that's a red flag, and that's a red flag. So how can we help people and encourage them to sort of get through that? For me, I just try to focus on, I need to focus on driving. I'm getting home. That's what I'm going to do. So I really focused on the dials in the car. I focused on the cars around me, and I really focused more than I ever have done, even as a trucker for 15 years, everything that was going on around me. So I didn't focus too hard on the fact that I got nowhere to go. Is that a good strategy for sensories?
Yeah. And using what you have, because there you're focusing vision-wise. You had auditory for the sense of familiarity and some form of calming through the auditory system because of voices and all the rest of that, and then using the vision, focusing on what is right in front of you. So we need it's always working best when we combine sensory and cognitive and any other strategies that come to mind, because we're so multifaceted as humans. just often people don't realize, don't see the importance of sensory when they are neurotypical. But it's precious when you can combine the two. So you were using an awful lot of vision there. So you were using your auditory system, you were using vision to focus, keep eyes, so that you could try and focus on something while obviously your brain is going to be active, because there's a lot of things to cognitively process in order to keep safe and to work out what to do next, and to make sure that you're not stranded, and to make sure if you need food and toilet and what's going to happen overnight and what's happening with the family. There are loads of cognitive things that would have been flying around that you need to take captive of those at every single point that they were coming. And where you could, you used vision, maybe, it's using touch, and just hugging self, and stroking yourself and saying, you'll be all right, getting the right kind of temperature. Using sensory and cognitive strategies are powerful when they can be combined together, because we're multi-functional, multi beings, pathways.
Right. So I get home, and then the next day I'm quite short-tempered because I'm really burned out, because I've spent the best part of, 7 hours, 6 hours listening to an engine, making sure it's sounding okay. My family were really lovely because they knew I'd be tired because I'd had a bit of a crisis. But I'm quite short-tempered the next day. And I'm at one point, Joe, my wife, said, "You're just tired. You just need a rest." And so I tried to get some rest in. And but that's the other side of it, isn't it? When it goes wrong and we get tired, then we have to process that we've been tired. And that was a bit where I definitely fell down, because I didn't really recognize that I was tired.
And I think it's more of a we use often don't often use it, but it's a sense of a sensory hangover. It's the sense of what happens afterwards once your body has been so assaulted the way that it has, and has gone into such fright and flight and freeze, and just had so many neurochemicals flooding through the system. There is that sense of needing to restore and recuperate and regenerate and repair all of the stuff and all the stuff that's flying around your body at that time. So the sense of rest, that's also where we've got the preparing for the crisis anyway, with a hand or the bag or whatever. But you've also got the time afterwards when rest, the recuperation, is perhaps a word I would use perhaps more. And it's how, for some people, that would be the time to go for a walk. That would be the time to go for a cycle ride, so that the rest is more of a time to repair and recuperate in a way that meets your sensory needs, that will help those neurochemicals being absorbed back into a state, your parasympathetic nervous system into a state of calm, alertness, and recovery and repair. And sometimes that will be, just sitting doing nothing, sitting with a cup of tea, just allowing yourself to sleep, or just to think, or sit there patting the dog. For others, it will be going out for a bike ride. For others, it will be going down the gym. For others, it will be going for a swim. Whatever is needed. Some would need to get up and dance, and that would help the repairing, the recuperation process. So I think it's important for people to find what their rest is. What is that in a healthy way, from a sensory healthy perspective? What are the best ways? And there won't always be one, I would suggest. There are times when actually you do need to go for a run, and there are other times where you just need to lie in front of the TV and not do anything. And there are times where you will physically need to sleep to allow the body to recover and recuperate. But it's finding what rest means for you, and not what other people think is rest may not be rest and recuperation for you. So again, tune into your own needs, and go with what is important, what you feel is important to do at that time and in that moment.
I wanted to ask you about you mentioned about the hand, and you mentioned these 5 things that you could have. So could you just tell us, just go through those one at a time for us again? I've got breathing and then I forgot the rest.
That's because it's supposed to be personal to you. And that's why I coach each individual. Okay. But it's finding the 5 things that work best for you. So yeah, but breathing is pretty much normally the first one, because it's so powerful at just calming things down, slowing the mind down, if more than anything else, because you have to count more slowly. So by counting slowly for 5 or for 7, and then, holding and then releasing, it gives you that sense of empowerment, a sense of control, and that you are in control of this. You can control your body, you can control your minds. So again, it's using the sensory, it's using the physical body to help the cognitive side of things, because we need both best to be working together. But often, so breathing's the first one. Second one, for often people, because they can be at the dentist, they can be at the supermarket, they might be stuck in the car, they might be on a train, they might be on a plane, they might be in places where it's fairly contained. So literally a squeeze and release. So squeeze of the body, because you set your proprioceptive receptors off. It's very organized. It's kind of right, okay, this is where my body is. When you kind of lose sense of self and orientation, it's a sense of, right, okay, now I can actually feel my body. So there'll be a squeeze. You can do it in your leg muscles, your feet, your buttocks, your stomach, your arms, your legs, your neck. So squeeze and count for 3 and then release. And then squeeze again and then release. So you have breathing in and then holding and releasing, squeezing and releasing. Physically, just give yourself a rub all over, a big hug. If nobody else is there to give you a big hug, if you have nothing else to put around you, you might have something, you might have a coat, but you might just want to give yourself a big squeeze and a big cuddle and a big rub. Again, go up and down the legs, go up and down around the arms. Just a sense of comfort, but sensory, just a lot of good sensory input by giving yourself a rub all over. Check the temperature. Some people will need things to be cooler, and some things will need to be warmer. So that is where that you either take layers off or you put layers on. What else have we got? Yeah, the vestibular system. Do you need to? That's okay. Let's concentrate purely on the vestibular system. Do you need to tip your head upside down, shake your head in an upside down position, and then come back up again? Do you need to turn around on the spot? Do you need to spin a bit, or just literally move your head around? Do you need to just slowly tip your head back and forwards? Do you need to rock? Do you need to rock side to side? Do you need to rock back and forwards? Just stimulating those receptors in the inner ear by using head position in a different way. So find something that is calming to you to be able to use. Then we use vestibular and proprioception, which is much more than the running up and down on the spot. Being more physically active, using both the head and the muscles together, to do some star jumps, to whatever you feel you need to do. Punch bags, all of that kind of stuff, and just get the body big and involved. But so it depends where you are as to what your 5 are going to be. Or it could be switching on the radio. It could be looking at the dial of a car. It could be looking at the scenery around you and counting the leaves of the trees if you're having to wait for something or for a pickup truck. If you're in the dentist or the doctor's and you're in the doctor's surgery, what can you count? What can you visually look at? Is there a picture where you can count how many different colours there are? Is there a picture where you can, what can you look at? The door frames, how many little markings and scrollings are there on the door frame? Identify, use your systems, use any sensory system to give it some input in a way that's helping and regulating. So it would be, I think it's a great for your homework for this week, is find your top 5. What would your 5 be in any of the senses? And you might find that, goodness, you're a real visual person and you would use visual things a lot. Or you might realize you're more of a tactile person, and you'll want to go more for the hugs or for the temperature, or you might have something that's a bit more weighted. You actually want to put your bag on your lap, because actually that's quite organizing. And if you're sitting in a car and you can't move, then actually having some pressure and some weight on your legs is just a little bit more grounding. Or you can actually hug and just squeeze your bag for that sense of comfort and regulation. So it'd be interesting to see what people's top 5 is, really.
I'm going to go off and think about those. I know that I pulled my zip up on my hoodie and I sort of pulled it up a bit, and I did make it all nice and neat and tidy, which I didn't deliberately do, but I guess I'm sort of subconsciously doing something of this because I just wanted my it to be. I mean, I'm in a car, I don't really care, but I did then, and I actually spent a bit of time making sure the seatbelt was in the right place. And I wasn't trying to look nice because I'm in a, it's not going to be for that. But I just wanted it to feel somehow ordered, which makes sense. One of the things I'm fascinated by, talking to you more and more, is how often, quite frequently, we do things which are actually good for our sensory health that either we're not really aware it's a good thing for our sensory health because we're not deliberately doing that. And on the back of that, actually, we're doing things that are really good for us because I think we probably know ourselves better than we give ourselves credit for. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think that's where Jean Eyres back in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, as she was growing into all of this and who pioneered the way for sensory integration, sensory processing and integration therapy, she just observed. She was a brilliant observer of people. And so she started to then dissect, because she loved the neuroscience as well. She was then trying to work out why people were doing what they were doing, because it was spontaneous, because it was natural to them, or it wasn't. And she's like, why aren't some people doing this when other people do? What is it about what they're doing and why? And that's in a way where all of this came from, because what she did was observe normal, natural behavior. And she recognized that problems were caused when people weren't processing sensory input terribly well, because they wouldn't do things that other people would spontaneously choose to do to regulate themselves or to give themselves that sense of order when they've lost an awful lot of order and control because of crises that happen. So yeah, I love the fact that she just observed and learned off other people and was prepared. It wasn't about her spouting things, it was about her observing things and thinking about why people were the way they were. I enjoy that too.
Wow. Coming back to the 5 things that can help you, if you want to find your 5 things, you mentioned, Dan, that you need to get some help working on what they are. If you want some help working out for you what that might look like, any sensory issues, then you can find out more about Anne Lord Jackson on our website, best easiest place to go. It's got some links and some information for you. If you go to pure247radio.org, pure247radio.org/ALJ, that will take you to a page on our website. And if you've got any questions for us here that you want to pose, you can email us hello@pure247radio.org. hello@pure247radio.org. Thank you, Anne.
Great.
I wasn't expecting to go down that road, but it's a real life example.
Isn't it? And that can be just so applicable to so many different areas. And we hope and pray that it won't be other people stuck on a motorway. But these crises happen, and those meltdowns are very real, and those scary things are a regular occurrence. If you're my people, if you're listening to this, you'll know exactly what we're talking about. And it's not about being in a car for you; it is just living life. So let me help if I can.
Anne Lord Jackson, thank you very much. A pleasure as always. We'll be back for more of something different, which is what I really like, again next week.
Bye.